Welcome, everybody. Today we have for you Alice Heiman of Alice Heiman Inc. And she's going to talk to us about trade shows and trade shows for startups and when you should participate in startups.
Trade shows.
And yes, you should always participate in startups. But when should startup participate in trade shows? Okay, so Alice, take it away. Thank you. Well, thank you all for coming. I am excited to be here as a startup myself. Actually, I have been in business for over 20 years with my company, Alice Heiman LLC, where we help companies increase sales. But last October, after having so many people start up their companies, grow themselves, and make a lot of money, I thought I should start up a startup of my own. And I did, and it's called Show Makeover, and that's our website. So you can visit there in your own time. And what we are doing is making sure that companies, young or old, whether they're new to trade shows or have been doing them for 30 years, can get a return on their investment and actually close deals. So here's the thing. We go to trade shows and we spend a lot of money, and it's good for branding. And for most big companies, trade shows live in the marketing budget, not in the sales budget. So it's a very interesting thing because marketing is responsible for the return on investment, the ROI, for those trade shows, but sales is really the ones who are going to benefit from that and need to benefit from that because it's a lead generation method for them. But unfortunately, most trade shows, they're generating leads and not closing any deals. So there's a lot of companies out there that focus on trade shows and all of the marketing aspects and they'll build you a beautiful booth. They'll help you get great promotional items with your logo on them. They will help you send out emails. They will do a lot of marketing stuff, but they do not show you how to do the sales side of a trade show. And so that's why we started up this company. It's in a niche that nobody seemed to be filling at the moment. There are a few consultants here and there that were doing something, but not in a big way. So we hope to grow to a $40 million valuation. That's my big, hairy, audacious goal. I get a $40 million valuation and sell this company in about 5 years. But for now, what I'm doing is bringing this information to people all over the country so that they can do a better job at trade shows. So I'm going to start with a couple of questions. The first one is, how many of you currently participate in trade shows or events in some way? Raise your hands. Okay, good. How many of you who are not are thinking about starting to do it? Perfect. Okay. Now, how many of you from your past life before you were at your current company did exhibit at trade shows, and so you know what that's all about? All right. There you go. All right. So then I think that most of you know what it's like to be at a trade show. Is there anyone here who's never been to a trade show at all? Okay, good. So you know that these are busy places. There's classes and things going on and speakers and such, and then there's these big exhibit halls with lots of people and lots of buzz and tons of exhibitors and people moving about. And I always, it reminds me of Finding Nemo, where, you know, Dory is swimming, right? Swimming. And she, because that's what it's like if you're walking in a trade show, right? It's like,
Shiny object.
Shiny object. And if you are the one who's trying to get their attention with an exhibit booth, you know, that doesn't help you at all when they're, so you have to really think about that. And that's why these great booth builders are, if they know what they're doing and they help you with your messaging and all, you know, that can be really good. You can capture their attention, these people swimming through the aisles, right? But also we're going to talk about walking trade shows, because I know how many of you just go to trade shows and walk and find, right? And so that's one of my favorite ways. So we're going to talk about that too. So we've all been to trade shows, so we know what that's like. So we're going to start with the keys to success that you know from your past life. And I might have to debunk a few myths here, but that'll be okay. We'll see what we're going to do. So in your past life of going to trade shows, what things did you do that got you qualified leads that turned into an actual opportunity for you to sell something? Tell me some things that you did that really worked. Yes. Oh, say your name so everybody.
So I'm Kristen Axline. So I have a kind of a jaded view of trade shows because a contact isn't prospect.
Right.
However, a trade show can be a really great place to do PR. It can be a really great place to get visibility. And so that is the kind of thing that then has buzz that follows on.
So you found that having great visibility at a trade show is a key to getting a good lead.
Not just great visibility, really focusing on PR. Really focusing on meetings and on the media and analysts.
Media and analysts. This is great. Tell us your name.
Kevin Lyons with Flash Vote. So we have qualifying conversations at the booth. We don't give out stuff. We don't try to get people to stop and take our stuff. We find actual leads.
Okay, so qualifying conversations. I love that. That's super important, right? Okay.
John Vogelman with the Man Gen. Being a speaker at a conference.
Dan Paul with Masquerade Media. Most of the trade shows I go will have some sort of meeting scheduling thing where you can schedule meetings with other participants and sort of trade information there.
Speed dating.
Yeah, exactly.
I like the shows where they literally have it set up that you can pick who you want to meet and they're ready to meet you and you go and you get like 20 minutes, you know, with them. And those are really awesome. Those are worth the money.
Yeah, hi, Aaron Schneider. I like to reach out to people before the show to say, hey, I'm going to be there. Maybe we can meet up for a coffee. I prefer to network away from the booth.
Related to that, Kevin again. Like if you go to the breakfast and lunch,
the networking events that they have
sitting
provided,
at the table, I always get good conversations with them.
Danny?
Leveraging current customers as a referral source.
Yes. Yes. I love that one. Leverage. I love the word leverage when it comes to sales. I mean, sales is my life, right? And I think that we make sales so hard by just doing it the dumb way. I don't know what else to say. But leverage, that's what sales is really about. It's about leverage and helping people. If you get that, leverage and help people. Leverage and help people. You will have more sales than you ever need to, you'll have all the sales you need. Leverage relationships. Because your best vendors or your best customers will be so excited to drag you around and introduce you to people. They love doing it.
Yeah, but don't you find that there are fewer sort of qualified execs at these meetings? And it really, I'm sorry. You used to be able to meet people, but.
I think that,
the guy who works for the guy who works for the guy who works for the guy isn't the right level for me to talk to, and he has absolutely no motive to
introduce you, right?
Well, no, to sponsor a conversation up because his MBOs are way down.
Right. Yeah, I think that that's true of many shows. But I will say this: Exhibitor Live and CEIR, which are two organizations that do a lot of research on events and trade shows, both say that 70% of the people at a trade show are there to look to see what they want to, what they want to buy, to find new products. I think that if you do the upfront work, the reach out before, you're more likely to meet with the people who can buy from you than if you stand in the booth and they come to you. Because the people kind of walking through the exhibit area a lot of times are not the senior executives, and they're not the ones who can buy from you. I think that's true. I mean, I really do. I feel like they're the looky-loos and they're just collecting stuff. I call it trick-or-treating. They just go by and get something from each booth. All right, so these are some of the things. Anything else you want to add, some things that make you successful? Yeah.
A question. Are you using the term trade show or conference?
Yeah, equally. So most trade trade shows, most conferences have a trade show affiliated with them. Some trade shows, the main, like a fancy food show, gigantic, right? There's one in San Francisco, there's also one in New York. It's mostly a trade show, but then they do have some conferencing, like some speakers and some breakout sessions, but that's not their main thing. The others are the opposite. They have tons of training and a little bit of trade show.
Right, okay.
But everything that I'm saying here would also apply to having your own event where you bring your customers, which I am a huge advocate of, having your own trade show, conference, event, whatever you want to call it, symposium, summit. I love to help companies have a summit and bring their own customers to them, and then they bring their prospects too, and then guess what their customers do? Brag to the prospects about how great it is to be your customer. So any event that you're doing, this could apply to.
Got it, thanks.
Cool. All right, so before we go into specifically trade shows, I want to talk about lead generation in general, because especially for those of you who are startups, which raise your hand if you're with a startup. Okay, so a lot of you are with startups. So I want to make sure that we understand where trade shows fit in lead generation, and this really applies to you guys as well, but you have a marketing department, right? Yeah, so these guys are from ITS Logistics, just down the street. You see their beautiful logo on the building. And so when you get a little bigger and you have a marketing department, that's great because they're going to help you with lead gen, but guess what? What do all salespeople want more of? Qualified leads. So we got to talk about leads. So trade shows is one way to get qualified leads. That's it. It's one way. And most marketing budgets have up to 50%, and some I've seen 75% of their budget for trade shows. That's huge. The problem is they're not delivering the qualified leads to the salespeople. So now you're telling me you spent all the marketing budget on trade shows and you're not delivering me, my sales team, qualified leads. Don't like that. I don't like that. But I'm the VP of sales and I have no control over the marketing budget. This is happening.
But you understand that marketing is trying to get context. Marketing just wants people to spam.
I know.
So I know, but this would be.
We're not that in a second.
This was a really, I mean, that's the crux of a huge problem. We got this many contacts, why aren't you closing them?
Because their contacts are not leads. 100% right.
Suspects.
So, just a quick thought on that, but then we'll get back to it, is that to fix the trade show problem that most companies have, now you're startups, you have a chance to do it right from the beginning, but to fix the problem most big companies have, sales and marketing would actually have to talk about what is a qualified lead and agree on that. That's what has to happen, right? I mean, John is, he works for a huge marketing company. And
well, no, except that we call them MQL. We call them marketing qualified.
I know, I'm
just saying.
Well, a marketing qualified lead is a thing, but it's not a sales qualified lead.
I know, but I feel like we're in 1995 and it's 2019,
right.
and the world has changed and
they haven't, right? And they're standstill.
No, actually the world has changed, and so marketing has its own little secret language of twins, and it's self-rational.
No, that's what I'm saying. They've stood still, and we've moved on away from them.
No, they actually haven't stood still.
Oh, you don't think so?
Taken control. No, sales used to own these, and marketing owns them now.
There needs to be a break down the wall between marketing and sales. Marketing can't just pitch leads over to sales and expect that there's going to be any results.
Contacts.
There has to be alignment, as Alice said, between the two.
So
there has to be an agreement.
Yeah, I think it's because in the old days when I was young selling, and that people had to call you. There was no internet and there was no, so to talk to you, they had to call you. So that, if they're calling you, they must really actually want to talk to you. Now they can download your stuff and do a little thing here and land on your page, but that's not a qualified lead. They didn't pick up the phone and call you, right? I mean, those are marketing qualified leads. They're not sales qualified leads. So let's talk about lead sources. So lead sources for sales. What are some other things besides trade shows? How can you get leads?
Opt-ins on your website.
What? Opt-ins. Okay, so
networking.
okay. Danny?
Outsource it.
Yep, you can outsource, but what are they gonna do?
I mean, for us, I mean, we talked about it, Zoom.
Mhm.
Zoom info, it's a great tool for our sales tools. It gives you more information on the company, who's the right person to call, you know, financially, where they're at, manually.
So you can get lists from Hoover's, which is Hoover's DMV. You can get Zoom, which is Zoom or Discover, which is now one company too, because they just merged. And so you can get lists. What else?
Referrals?
Referrals. Excellent. That's a great way. Yes.
Advertising.
Advertising. Competitors?
Working on their.
Tie in with Avi and our website is SEO,
SEO, SEM, search engine optimization, that kind of stuff, right?
Cold
Nope.
calling
I
and
was just
cold
gonna say,
mailing.
nobody mentioned cold yet. Cold
Cold
calling,
calling and cold mailing.
cold contact. So you go up here, you get a list, and you do a cold contact with mail or phone, or it could be direct mail, it could be email, it could be phone, it could be actually, so you could do a social touch. That's right. LinkedIn, so social media. Okay, so these are all ways you can get leads, right? So do these cost money?
Some.
If not money, time, right? LinkedIn,
Some way or another, they cost you money.
right? So you could get LinkedIn Navigator, which is expensive. You guys probably use LinkedIn Navigator, right? It's not cheap. It's about $100 a month per sales rep, but it does give you ability to make, right? So I don't, opt in on your website. Somebody had to build it. Somebody has to look at them. I mean, so networking, you're going to pay to go to the networking event. You're going to take your time. Outsourcing lists will Zoom info and Discover that cheap. So referrals, right? That's pretty inexpensive. If you have great relationships, do a great job for people, and then ask them to introduce you to other people, nice, right? So that's a good one. Advertising costs money, whether you do it on the web or on a billboard or wherever you are. Your competitors, I don't know, probably doesn't cost you any, but you're just kind of snooping on them, seeing who they're serving, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can speak to the marketplace, the industry specific, to the competitors.
Okay. SEO, SEM definitely costs something to do it. Cold email, mail, phone, any social media, those cold contacts. If you use any kind of tool to help you, that tool costs money. Mailing things costs money. Picking up the phone costs money, right? Taking time or money. And social media, same thing. Social media is not really free because it takes, if you do it properly, you have to have a plan. Somebody's got to make that plan. You got to execute on that plan. You got to pay people to do it. You got to do it right. So these are all different lead sources. So what I'm going to ask you to do when you leave here is for your own business. And if you have a marketing department, work with them to do this. What are we spending on, first of all, what are the lead sources we're using in our company? Find out what they are. And what are they spending on it? And then the question is, where do trade shows spend? Trade shows, events, conferences. When I say trade shows, I mean all trade shows, events, conferences. How does that fit into all of this? And what percent of your budget, what are you spending? So if you can figure out the return on investment for, for each of these lead sources, so let's say networking brings you, you spend, very small, maybe 5% of your budget on networking, but it's bringing you 50% of your qualified leads. That salespeople, somebody who wants to talk to you about your product or service. I did this with a client recently, and they just broke it into inbound, outbound, referrals, and trade shows. Trade shows was, I can't remember what percent of their budget, but it was a large percent, like 50%, and it was only bringing in 5% of their qualified leads, only 5%. But they were spending 50% of their budget on it. And then when we equated that to dollars, so now not just leads, but how many deals did you close because of a trade show? It was really small. So something's wrong if you're spending 50% of your budget on trade shows that's bringing you 5% of your leads, and the dollar amount of that 5% was maybe like $250,000 compared to, you know, they're a $10 million company. That's not enough. So we either have to stop doing trade shows or do it differently. We can't just keep doing that. But if we never stop and say, so here are the things you ask. What percent, or the number or percent of qualified leads, the number of opportunities, the number of closed deals, and the amount of those closed deals. That's what you want to know. So if I do any one of these activities, I want to know every time how many qualified leads did that produce. And again, marketing and sales have to agree. At your company, it could be different. A qualified lead for you is not the same as a qualified lead for you. So you guys have to decide on that. So the number of qualified leads, the number of opportunities, the number of closed deals, and the dollar amount of those closed deals, which is probably the most important thing, because if you've spent $250,000 to go to 5 shows, which would not be unusual, especially if you have a booth, right? If you're just walking, it won't cost that much, but if you have a booth, and you spent $250 and you closed 1 deal because of it, and that deal was $250, you didn't even pay, you know, because there's not $250,000 worth of profit. You didn't even cover your cost. So we have to think through what we're doing mathematically before we just keep doing it and keep spending. So ask yourself, are we really getting the return on investment that we should for any of these lead sources? What's driving people to say, I'm interested, can I talk to somebody? That's what we really need, right? And some of them take longer because you got to drip nurture them in different ways. They don't say that right today, but maybe in 6 months they do. So we have to stay with people. But we need qualified leads. So we want to track that. So now, if we just take a look at trade shows, the next thing that I would have you do, so if you get this figured out, what your return on investment is, all these different lead sources, then you would look at your trade shows. So for those of you who have been to trade shows in the past, you would do the same thing. You list each show you've been to, right, and how much you spent. And by the way, if you give me your email address, Logan's sitting over here. Logan is my marketing assistant, and she can collect your card. I will send you an ROI calculator on a spreadsheet that is for trade shows, so you can put all your trade shows on there. And if you haven't ever gone to any yet, you can put the ones you're thinking about going to on there and project what you'd like to do in terms of goals and such. So take your trade shows, list them all out, and figure out what you're going to spend, how many leads you would expect to get, or how many leads you did get, how many of those were qualified leads, because badge scanning, collecting badge scans, that's not necessarily a lead, right? We want qualified leads. So how many qualified leads you got, and then how many of those turned into sales opportunities, and then how many of those closed. So I've got that all laid out on a spreadsheet that I'll be having to send you. Well, if you start looking at that, right, you might say, show A, you know, gave us a 50% return on our investment, show B, 100%, and you might start deciding whether you ever want to go to that show again or not. And if you want to go to that show again and you didn't get a very good return on your investment, then it's time to change and do something different, right? So that's what I would have you do, is just write that down and look at it for yourself. And if you're planning to go to trade shows, then use the sheet to plan them all out, and then go back at the end and see, okay, did we get the results we were looking for? And if not, make a change. Okay. So once you know kind of how the trade shows you've been to stack up, you can decide if you want to go to same ones again, different ones, what kind of research you might need to do, what kind of help you might need to make those a little bit better. All right, so if you are a startup, my suggestion for you, and even if you're not a startup, is do not exhibit at a show where you have never been before, because you don't know what it's like. You don't know what the traffic flow is like. You don't know what the people are like. I think also, like she said, they're not buyers. Maybe they're not the right people for you. You know, there's a lot of people there, but they're not the right people. What's the point? So don't go there, you know? I like some of these smaller regional conferences where you do get, you know, to know people and such. I think that you have more opportunity to just actually have a conversation than versus just walking through this crowded hall of people. So there's so many different things you take a look at besides just these gigantic shows, although some of those are good too. But if you go to a gigantic show, don't expect to cover it with 2 people. Send a team, 5, 6. I got one client going to a trade show, they're sending 15 people. It's their most important trade show of the year. You bet you better send 15 people because you need to cover your booth, you need to cover all the networking events, and somebody's got to walk the floor, right? Okay. So let's talk about how can you get better results from any trade show. So whether you're planning to go or whether you have been before and you want to get better results, there's 3 things that we want to do. We want to look at before, during, and after. Okay? So in the trade show makeover speak, we call before create a winning strategy. Create a plan that is going to take you where you need to go. And this is probably the very most important because the others don't happen well if you don't get this part right. But this is where we spend the least time, unfortunately. So during the show, we call that dominate. We want you to dominate during the show. We don't dominate by pitching or demoing or talking about ourselves. We dominate by being interesting and memorable and having great conversations. I was talking to Manny's team from ITS over here earlier, talking about striking up conversations, having interesting conversations with people. That's how you can dominate during the show. And then after, if you don't do the proper follow-up, if you aren't set up well, if your marketing team hasn't helped set you up for success with the messaging that's going to go out afterwards, it's going to be hard to get the qualified leads to actually want to talk to a salesperson. So we will come back from a show with people who have already scheduled appointments with you, people who will want to schedule appointments but they didn't do it at the show, and then people who aren't quite ready to schedule an appointment. But we'll nurture them until they are. What we don't want to come back with is badge scans, because if we have just a pile of badge scans, then that's great. Somebody said, oh, let's get 200 badge scans at this trade show. They might think those are leads. They're not. It's just a contact list. And then you pollute your marketing database, you know, Pardo, Marketo, Eloqua, whatever, you pollute it with this list from the show of people who weren't really interested, but they just happened to walk by your booth and you grabbed their badge and scanned it, or they picked up a t-shirt and then you said, let me scan your badge. So what we want to do is stop scanning badges and have great conversations so that people want to actually talk to us after the show. That's the critical thing. All right. So what are some of the things that you know, and we talked about them earlier, some things to do before the show to get yourself set up properly?
Don't most trade shows and conferences have a list of exhibitors and attendees or things?
Yeah, you gotta look at that sources.
If they have the list, which they should, but they sometimes will charge you for it and it's not cheap. If you can afford to get the list ahead of time, that's great. What some places will do, some events will give you a list of company names that are going to attend and not the details, and that's better than nothing, because you can kind of figure out for yourself. But if you can afford to buy the list ahead of time, that's great. There are organizations, companies that will supply you lists of people who attended in the past with enriched data, which means they've gotten the phone numbers, they've gotten the email addresses, stuff like that. But if you can somehow get a list, great. It's not always easy to do, and it's not cheap, but if you can get a list, it's great. Now, the exhibitors, on the other hand, are always on the website, so they're easy to get. If the exhibitors are your target,
That's what I was saying. Just
you can go look,
Yeah.
right? So get a list of participants or exhibitors, whatever you can get. Okay, what else?
Do they offer layout to positioning where each one of them are going?
They do. Mhm.
Yeah,
You can, if you're gonna walk the show and the exhibitors are your target, then get the map. They just make a map of the show.
When I went to Comdex back in the 90s, there was a daily publication that may have moved to the web, but try to get an article about you written in whatever medium they published.
Yeah, they did that in the book expo. That was Show Daily. It's the newspaper, and I would get an article in there. I'd send them a press release and get an article about this author. You know.
And now a lot of them will use social media in the same way. So they'll tweet out or post something important. But this is, I'm going to say this is even bigger. So what we're really talking about here is research. Because what you're trying to do is know as much about the show as possible. So here's the kinds of things that I believe will make you better during the show and after. So you want to have high quality conversations, memorable conversations, right? So in order to have high quality, memorable conversations, you have to have something to talk about. If all you have to talk about is your own products and services, that is not what people want to hear. So you need to research the show, everything about the show, who the speakers are, who the keynote is. And I always say, get in and listen to that keynote because that can give you conversation material for the rest of the show. Because whatever that keynote is talking about is important, especially if it's an industry expert of that particular industry. So you want every bit of information you can get on the show, the speakers, the exhibitors, the topics. So you're armed with that information. Let's spell better. You're armed with a lot of good information. The industry trends for that industry, like what's going on. We were talking about the private label show in Chicago. What's going on in the private label industry these days? That's a hot topic. That would be really important. So you want to research all of that before you go. And your salespeople, so if you have a marketing department, they can help. If they could do some of this research and then brief the salespeople, that'd be great. Maybe they don't have time, or maybe they don't have enough people either. Salespeople, take 15 minutes, get on the internet. It's all right there. Go to their website, right? And then whatever organization is putting the show on probably has its own regular website, not just the show website, which will have articles, all these articles that you guys were talking about that tell you what's going on. Like I just prepped Leica Microsystems. They make the microscopes, high-power microscopes that neurosurgeons use. And these things cost like $500,000 a piece, right? And they went to the AANS, which is the American Association of Neurological Surgeons. And the salespeople are all independent contractors for Leica. They're all manufacturers reps all over the country. I said, okay, so what are the topics these doctors are going to be talking about? And it was like dead silence. I go, right, so let's find out what these doctors are going to be talking about. So we went from the AANS website to the AANS organization and looked at the last couple of articles and the trending topics and the research, and we found words that the doctors are using and what they're concerned about. So they were concerned about things like visibility. Well, this microscope has a special thing that helps with that visibility. Now they actually these microscopes can make different colors when they're looking in there so they can see. It's amazing. And so there's a name for that, and the doctors were talking about that. I'm like, okay, so get the words that the doctors use and be able to say, how is this impacting your surgeries? How can you do this or that with this new technology that's out there? And not talk about microscopes, talk about what the doctors want to talk about, which is improving patient outcomes, because hospitals now get measured on patient outcomes, right? And the surgeons care about patient outcomes. So don't talk about microscopes, talk about patient outcomes. Yes, your microscope gives better patient outcomes. So let's talk about that. And so that's where this research, if you didn't do that ahead of time, how could you have that kind of high-level conversation? You couldn't, you wouldn't. You just can only talk about yourself and your products and services, right? So that, I think, is a before thing that we have to make a habit. We have got to research, and know what we're walking into so we have smart conversations with people. All right, what else? Oh, I know one other thing to research. Who put the show on? Who are the organizers of the show? The organizers of the show know everybody. they can introduce you. So I always want to make best friends with the show organizer. I want to know who they are. So like for AANS, it's a committee of people and they're volunteers. And then there's like one person who's the executive director of their organization who's paid. But everybody else is a volunteer and they all work at big hospitals. So if you're a Leica, don't you want to know those people? But nobody thinks of it, right? So figure out who the organizers are, befriend them, ask what you can do to help them, whatever, and then once you know them and you stay in touch with them and you're helpful, and then if you need an introduction, they're happy to give it to you. So that's one of my favorites. All right, what else can you do beforehand that's going to help you get qualified leads out the other side?
Somebody mentioned earlier about sending out invitations for meeting.
Yep, meetings. Set up your meetings ahead of time.
Have a party.
Have a party, right? So here's, I want to caution you, so have an event. I think, plan an event of some type. I like private events, but I also have seen a lot of private events where people just come and eat and drink and leave, and there isn't even any signage. Like, who put this on? I got an invitation in the mail, and so I went to that address, and then I walked in the door, and that was it. Like, nobody greeted me. No one had a t-shirt on that said what company they were from. There was no pop-up banners, nothing. So I'm like, wow, very nice of you to feed me and let me have your cocktails. I don't even know who you are if I wanted to talk to you. I actually, this is a true story. I go to Dreamforce every year, which is salesforce.com. Me and 157,000 of my best friends at Dreamforce. It's awesome. They bring in cruise ships because there's not enough hotels. And this person that I know and two other companies spent $75,000 and rented a hornblower yacht and invited a bunch of us, and they even made this cool little graphic of who they invited and sent it out to everyone. The one person I knew and the other two companies I'd never heard of. And I was seriously interested in finding out who they were and why they spent so much money to do this event. So we get there, and there's two people sitting with a computer checking you in, and then you just walk down the big ramp and get on this big hornblower yacht. No signage. No one welcomed us. Nobody with a t-shirt on of any of the three companies who paid the $75,000. Nothing. No announcement. No, nothing. So I was looking, like literally walking around trying to find, like, hey, does anybody know anybody who works at this company? I wanted to talk to them and find out what they do. Nope. So I thought, wow, that was an expensive way to not get any brand recognition. I mean, even if they just only did it for the brand recognition, which would have been fine, then wrap something, wrap the bar with your logo or a cool saying or something, or put up a pop-up banner, or at least the people who work for you let them all wear t-shirts.
Cocktail napkin.
Anything, thank you. Like, give me a break, something. I didn't even have a cocktail napkin with their logos to take back. Hello, they need your help. I mean, I am not kidding. So at the end, so the woman who I did know, I called her later and I was like, wow, that was so nice of you to invite me to that event, and that was lovely. And what were the other two company names of the people who paid for me to have that lovely evening? It was just appalling. So I tell you that only to say, don't do that. So if you want to have an event, great. The cocktail napkins get labeled. Everybody who works for you proudly sports your logo, like those nice collared shirts that ITS has, right? So we can identify who are the people who made this nice party for me. You don't need to sell at these events, but you certainly could greet people and say, thank you for coming. Hi, I'm your hostess this evening. I'm Alice with Alice Heiman LLC. So thank you for coming, and can I introduce you to someone? Like, do something, put up signage, do something to make it, I mean, people would expect that. Like, I expected the hosts to get on they had a band and they had microphones and everything, a PA system. I expect them to say, hi, this is who we are. Welcome to the hornblower yacht. Enjoy yourselves. If you need anything, let us know. Nothing. So, no, don't do that. But I do think events are great, and I like more intimate events. Like, one of my friends did a great job. He had very specifically invited, so we put on this event called Sales 3.0, and I'm part of that. I'm the MC for that. And we invite sales leaders, sales enablement, sales managers, sales VPs, chief revenue officers, but sales leadership. And out of that, he picked some companies he really wanted to get to know, and he invited them to a very nice dinner. And then he's just like you would at your own home. He just stood up and said, thank you all for coming. I'm Chad Burmeister. My company is ScaleX. We wanted to have you here this evening so we can develop relationships with you so that there are future possibilities. That's all you have to say. You don't have to sell them anything. So think about, having events for sure. Someone else said something earlier, a speaker. If you can arrange ahead of time to be the speaker, and there's lots of speaking opportunities, I think that is a really good before activity. Maggie, what time do I need to wrap up?
Oh, you have 20 minutes.
Okay, perfect. That's actually perfect.
I don't know how to do this, but usually at these trade shows, there are exclusive hot parties or receptions. So if you can invite your hot prospects, if you can somehow get into the party and get additional invitations to bring.
Right, so hop into other people's events too. So it's like have your own and others.
Crash event.
Crash. But you know how easy it is to crash? You call them and say, hi, I saw that you guys were having, I've done this a million times. I say you guys are having, oh, we'd love to have you, they say. I'm like, okay, can I bring someone? Sure. So.
This is a small thing that we always be appropriate for some shows, but volunteer.
Oh,
I
yeah.
used to run conferences. We had exhibitors volunteer to help with our fun run. That was sponsored to raise money for Special Olympics, and then there was always a planning committee. So then and I was the organizer. So the relationship was said about getting to the organizer. All my key exhibitors who were successful in sales would all come and say, "I'm on your committee."
Yeah.
Hint. And I'd say, "Of course." Hint, hint.
Yes, if there is a nonprofit affiliated with the event you're going to go to, get involved with that. That is a really good way to do it. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And volunteer if that's appropriate for you. Okay, yes.
I did something like if I was having a booth, I would offer to split a booth with another company.
Yes.
Like I was saying, there was this one coming up in CT Expo, which I went to last year, and I realized it was really good, and I was inviting people to do it, so then you get more buzz.
Right.
You can divide a booth up at
That's
10
right.
by 10 for free.
Yes, and the same with events. So if you want to have an event, like the person I knew who did the Horn Blur Yacht, that was smart that she divided that up 3 ways. But so I think it's good. If you have some affiliation with the show and you can do something in conjunction with someone, either share a booth or share an event, absolutely.
Synergy.
More synergy, I love
Because they
it.
know people you don't know.
Exactly. Okay, so a couple other things you need to do before. Obviously, if you're in charge of the booth, make sure you have a booth, you have the signage that you need, all of that good stuff. Make a schedule, who's gonna go? So we should decide on things like, what is a qualified lead for this show? Because at some shows, the qualified leads are different than others. What is a qualified lead? Decide on that. Who's gonna go to the show? Now, sometimes we just send salespeople. Maybe this is a show with engineers and they'd like to talk to a subject matter expert. Send a subject matter expert. Sometimes your senior executives should be there. When you're a startup, the founder should be there. People want to talk to the founder. If you're a young company, and big companies, remember, big companies are afraid of small companies. They really want to buy from you because you have a cool product, but they're afraid of you because if they don't pay you in 60 days, are you going to go under? Can you produce what you said you were going to produce if you're a startup and you don't have enough funding? So big companies are afraid of small companies, but when they meet the senior team, they have less fear, right? So think about who is going to go. Who should go to the show? And what's the schedule for them? Because people who have stood in a booth all day and not had a drink of water on their feet and their feet are aching are not happy people. And they do not do a good job in your booth. Trust me, I've been there. You're forcing yourself to make a smile. It's like one of the, couple of the companies I work with, the marketers tell me, we do not want salespeople in the booth. I'm like, what? No, we don't want salespeople in the booth. Okay, well tell me the stories. What's happened? Why don't you want salespeople in the booth? Their phone rings and they walk right out of the booth and leave us there all by ourselves. We don't have enough coverage. They just go take their calls. I'm like, okay, well, that can't happen. What else? And then they tell me, well, they pitch. I'm like, okay, well, they shouldn't be pitching. All these crazy things. So what we have to do is decide who's going to work, make a schedule, and what are they going to do while they're in the booth. So if I know that I have a break, I can see that, you know, my phone should be put away. I don't need my phone in the booth, right? And I know that at 2 o'clock, I get to check my phone and call my customers back. But what happens is the way they schedule the booth, they don't take into consideration that people need water and you shouldn't have food in the booth. So you have to have a break to get water. You need to check your email and your voicemail if you're a salesperson. So you need to give them breaks. These are simple things that people forget to do all the time.
Or if you're a morning person or an afternoon.
Right.
Because I'm not a morning person.
Right.
So I'm not going to be smiley.
And if I'm a salesperson and I'm chomping at the bit to walk the booths, you need to say to me, Alice, you get to stay in the booth right now, but later I promise you're going to go walk the show. Because that's what I want to do. I'm like, oh, when do I go walk the show? What about, you know? So you have to have a schedule, and then the salespeople will do what you want them to do. They'll stay in the booth and have conversations versus run out and answer the phone because they may not get another chance. So people need food and water, and they need to rest their feet. So that should be done all beforehand, right? So that, you know, if you get all of the stuff done ahead of time, when you get there, you can relax. You can have a good show. The other thing I really want to urge you to do is all of your follow-up. Get it done before you leave the show. Because when you come back, all those calls and all those emails that you didn't get to while you're at the show, right? And then you have all the follow-up from the show plus your regular work. You're not going to have time to write high-quality emails. So write the emails ahead of time. Decide how we're going to sort the leads when we get, which ones go to marketing, which ones go to sales, how are they going to get in the database, who's going to enter them. That should all be figured out before you ever leave. Come back with all these great leads. What are you going to do with them? Pile of cards sitting on your desk? That's what happens. I see it all the time. It happens to me too. I get, go somewhere and I'm like, oh, gosh, I gotta get all these into the database. So plan all that ahead of time. And if you know you're going to need some extra help after a big show, then get some temps in who are just going to type away or take that data and put it into Salesforce or whatever it is. Just know that you're going to need some help because you're going to have a lot of data after a show.
You know, one of the things that is interesting to do before the show is to let customers and partners know that you're going. Is there anything you are interested in particular? So there's a way of starting a conversation that can produce interest within an already qualified segment.
Yes.
And it still counts as money.
That's right. Let them know you're coming. All of your partners, all of your customers, everybody. Let them know you're going to be at the show, right?
And ask for action items.
Yeah, what do you need? Are you going? If you're not going, oh, can I collect anything for you? Can I get information on this or that? Absolutely, 100%. That is so great. You may be also calling them to set up meetings, but you can also just call them and say, what do you need? Because I'm going to the show and I might see some new stuff that you might be interested in, right?
I have a question. So you guys have clearly probably done that before. And I wrote that down and asked you that particular question. Would you coerce individuals like prospects that you were trying to get as well as the customers you currently already have, right, to go to these trade shows? Because like you said in the beginning, you're trying to get these folks to talk good about you as well while selling and making these sources as well. So what is your conversation when you try to talk to the outside or the other side of that?
You don't need to talk them into going to the show. The purpose of communicating with these folks is to let them know that you are keeping your finger on the pulse of the industry in which they have an interest, whether it's a horizontal or a vertical. I come from tech, so tech is my lens. But it's to let people know your job is not to get people to trade shows unless you're the sponsor, and that's part of your metric. But telling people that you're going to be there says you're engaged in the conversation, you're part of what's happening now. You're not just what you did. And remember, every implementation, even SaaS, has an expiration date. So you're trying to show sort of continuity and progress, not necessarily to get them to go to the show, but they're probably interested in what's going on in shows, may say, it's just a waste of goddamn time to get the 5 things I want out of the 1,000 things I don't. So you might be the summarizer or translator.
And on that note, which is excellent, is after the show, I usually write a blog post that's a summary of some of the coolest things I saw at the show. And that is a great prospecting tool for your existing customers as well as your future customers. We went to the show, You know, it's, what is it, Vidi Vidi Vici, we came, we saw, we conquered, right? So I always write one of those kind of blog posts at the end to wrap up and say, you know, oh, there was at Sales 3.0 and I talked to these people, or we used to do these, there used to be a tool where you could consolidate all the tweets and just pick the ones you want, like the best tweets from the show and send those back out. So I love that. I mean, you're just really trying to help them by saying, hey, we're gonna be at the show, you know, we go over here because we're really interested in what's happening in our industry. What can I, you know, is there information I can bring back for you?
Well, to that point, it validates you to the point where it's like, we're invested in our business, we're gonna continue to invest. Thus, you wanna work with us because we actually are putting forth this effort to get to these conferences, like, to our point, stay engaged in the marketplace. You're not just another cold call at that point. You've taken another step in the getting more clout.
So here's another cool thing, capitalizing on what you said. So I go to the Gartner conference, which is very expensive. Gartner is a research company like Forrester, Gartner, and a couple others. They do
enterprise research.
Enterprise research, big company research, right? And they pull down, you know, it's those people when they say 70% off, you know, where did that information come from? So the Gartner conference, they have a lot of analysts who speak and such like that. It's expensive. When we have a booth there, we invite prospects and we pay for their ticket. So if you are going to a show or if you're exhibiting at a show, you get a certain amount of tickets usually, or you can negotiate that ahead of time. How many tickets can I get if I get this booth? Then you can give tickets to customers or prospects who would really appreciate to go there that may not have been otherwise able to afford it. Or what maybe they, you know, their company wasn't going to pay for it for whatever reason.
You're creating leverage, like we're talking about, certain point of leverage behind that, like, yeah, I'm financially invested in you now, like, help me to a certain extent, right?
That's right.
Do you get those same tickets for sponsoring certain things there?
Sometimes you get tickets. When you sponsor, you usually get tickets with it.
When you sponsor, you get tickets, but remember, if you're inviting a prospect, the Gartner conference is a very good one. So Gartner sells their consulting services to the enterprises that their focus is primarily technology and business process. So they sell their services to enterprises, but they also sell their services to companies that supply the enterprise.
Right.
Now, frankly, when enterprises stop following Gartner's recommendation, vendors will stop paying Gartner to subscribe to their services. And so what's in it for Gartner, as a good example, is, you know, they'll have all sorts of firewalls, you know, no free tickets, and then you say, listen, love to go, but want to invite these prospects, they've never been to one of your conferences, then you get Gartner to fork over the ticket because it costs them nothing, and it's a fabulous way to prospect someone they will never ever get any other way. So you ask for things that they can do, has to be possible. They don't have to want to do them, they don't have to have done them before, they don't have to like it, but it has to be something they can do, and this is something they can do. They can't give you, without a lot of rigmarole, extra seats for your own team, but they can give you a ticket for an enterprise visitor.
Yeah, and I've done too where I've said to people already going to the show, yes, oh, you want to walk the show with me? And then they're like, oh, okay, because some people are really shy. I'm not, obviously. And they don't want to walk a show by themselves because they're afraid. They're afraid of people. And so they're like, they'll try to sell me something. But if I'm with Alice, she'll protect me. So, shields up. So anyway, you can invite someone to walk a show with you. Why not? Right?
Yeah.
And especially if they live in that city where you're going, or, you know, maybe whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities. So the point is, make a checklist for yourself. I have checklists I'd be happy to share with you of all the stuff you do before, so that when you're there, you can basically just be focused on the people you need to talk to and not be running around like a chicken with your head chopped off. Worried about, so where's so-and-so, or how come everybody left the booth, or what's going on, right? The schedule's already done. Here, it's right here. It's underneath the little thing where you hide all your stuff in the booth. There's the schedule, or everybody's got it on their phone. It's in a Google Doc. Everybody can get to it. And you can relax, right? Okay, so these are things you do before. So then during is easy. And what do we do during? If we're in a booth, we have memorable conversations. We try to book appointments. If we have appointments, we keep the appointments, right? If it's our turn to walk the show, we walk the show. If it's our turn to go to the networking event, we go to the networking event. Go to the keynote speakers. Don't just stay at your booth. Experience the show and gather the information so you are smart. Smarter because you were there, right? Not just meeting people is fantastic, but if you don't bring in some of that industry expertise, you're not growing either. So make sure you take advantage of that. Now, some shows, it's very interesting, they won't let the exhibitors in to hear the speakers. And Gartner is one of them. And it drives me nuts. And I talked to I'm actually on the Gartner Sales Council. And I talked to them and I'm like, do you not understand? Let them in. Well, there's not enough seats. I go, then have them stand in the back or have them wait until, or get a bigger room. Or pay, okay, the people who have the yellow badges go in first and the exhibitor badges can, if there's space, I said, there's always space. What, there's.
Simulcast it to a different room.
Exactly.
I've worked with partners where, for the annual sales meetings, the sales people say, well, we don't want the partners there. Great. So A, you don't want them knowing what you know and being able to talk to customers that you will never meet because they belong to these partners. And you want to be the shittiest partner that they've ever encountered so that they're going to be sure to put you at the bottom of the stuff they want to talk about. Are you sure there's nothing else we can get to? Your brakes are really, whatever it is, even if it's an emergency. So that.
Yeah, it's craziness. But anyway, if you're allowed to go to the sessions, go to the sessions. Okay, so you're during, I think you all know what to do during. The things that you shouldn't do during. Don't leave the booth. Don't leave somebody stranded, right? Don't wear uncomfortable shoes. Simple, right? Wear some kind of clothing that identifies you, like Demand Gen. That shirt's great, the ITS shirt. If you're going to, it's more of a show where you want to dress up and you don't want to wear a logoed shirt, then if you wear a nice dress shirt like that, have a badge. Logan, can we show you that? Have a magnetic badge, because I don't want to look at your belly button to figure out your name. And I don't know why people think that lanyards are so great. They're horrible because they hang right here. I'm like, really, please do not look at my belly. Thank you. But anyway, if you have this here,
now we can look at your boobs so much
better. Well, a little of my boobs. But, so these are great because they go on your jacket, they can go on your shirt. If you have a scarf, they can go on your scarf. They can go on anything. They can even go on the lanyard. So you have to wear the lanyard to get in and out, right? But I still have this on top of the lanyard because I want people to see my name, right? So if you're in the booth and you don't have a shirt, or even if you're walking the show, I mean, this is perfect. Either one of these shirts are perfect for a show because clearly I can see who you work for. Clearly I can see that you're both dressed nicely. So, just think about that. But these badges are great and they're very inexpensive. So please help yourself too. I have like 3 of them because I lose them all the time. So, yeah, so be where you're supposed to be, do what you're supposed to do, have memorable conversations, set up appointments if you can for afterwards. I know you really want to get around and see the rest of the show, but let's continue this conversation. What is, you're going to be home, maybe 5 days from now look like, next Tuesday at 2, can we get back on the phone and continue our conversation? Not let me sell you something, continue our conversation, because I don't even know if I should try to sell you anything yet, possibly. I first need to get to know you. So do all the good stuff during. And again, my main thing is be memorable. So on that note, the pre-messaging that gets sent out, to let them know that you're going to be there or to invite them or to schedule with them. If there's any marketing emails that go out, have them with a theme that people will recognize and use the art that's going to be on your booth. So they get the email and they see the art and they get to the exhibit, hall, and they walk and they're like, oh, I recognize that. I've seen it before. And it'd be super cool if that same art was on your website at least during the time of the show. So then when they go to your website, they're not guessing, is this the same company? Oh, okay, they know. Like if that was going to be, that's what's on my website, there would be some semblance of that in my booth art, and there would be some semblance of that on any messaging that I sent out.
But you can create a landing page that is the front door that then allows you to escape so that you are reinforcing the fact that you're at the show. If you're debuting new products, new logos, new colors, whatever, that landing page can just be the cover for your standard website, and then you created that reinforcement.
If you have a marketing team that can do that, it's great to have that landing page ready for the show, for before, during, and after.
If you're working with a web designer who is holding you hostage, read up, because there's no reason for you not to be able to do that.
Right. So be memorable in your messaging, be memorable in your conversations, care about others, talk to others, learn about them, don't let it be about you. And so then the last bit is after, right? So then what do we do after? So I think that the key to after is continue being memorable. So the messaging you send after, again, matches what you said before, matches what you did during, and the conversations that you're having came from all of these trends and, you know, all this stuff. So that messaging, you're talking about what's going on in their industry that may be affecting their company that you could maybe help, right? All about them. So afterwards, you are quickly following up on your hot leads, easy enough. Everybody knows how to do that. You've given some leads to marketing to nurture for you, great. You have got some messaging that you're going to send that may get the people who weren't as excited more excited, but you've got a plan that you've set up way before you ever started, so it's easy to deploy when you get back. Quick and easy. And I think the biggest thing I see with after that makes a mess is when marketing wants sales to call every single badge scan. And like salespeople aren't going to do it. They're just not going to do it. And so I think we really have to sort the leads and divvy them up between sales and marketing and have a good message that will keep people interested. Yeah, it's like cold calling. Don't give me a list of badge scans from a show. I mean, I may as well pick up a, I was going to say phone book, but you know how old I am. And just dial for dollars. I almost didn't say it, but what you did. So, but you see what I'm saying? Like, don't make salespeople, they don't want to call badge scans. You can drip nurture badge scans and get them to opt in or opt out so you know who's actually interested and who's not. But don't make salespeople call them. Let them call the hot leads. And leverage the speakers, leverage the events, leverage all the things that you did to try to get them to move forward and want to talk with you.
So one of the other things to do is when you're planning this, if you're going to have any kind of marketing campaign, if you're going to have any kind of program that you're executing, sometimes doing that as a follow-up to the show, whether you've got the connection, whether the customer is going to be there regardless, you can use that, here's what we learned in the messaging, as a launchpad for webcasts, for example. And you can use, bait and tchotchkes sometimes in the follow-up. So don't spend it in the booth.
Send it to them after.
But send it to them after, but also create some reason for them to participate where you then have content that is relevant to, but not a repeat of the conference. But that can be an effective way. Again, I object to the word lead being applied to a name that you got at a trade show. It's a contact. It's a flat out contact. It's not a lead. It may become one, but it's not. Had a vigorous discussion with someone. How many leads does it take to make a sale? How many names in your database? How many purchase orders did you take? That's how many. That's how many. So you can think about, you also want to think about getting the most of this investment that you're making, the substantial investment that you're making, whether you have a booth or are simply attending. You want to make the most out of this investment and thinking about where you go after. That's when you want to do an outreach, a webcast, some sort of a series perhaps. Articles are a little bit soft. You want to accompany them with articles, but really you want to have something where it gives them an opportunity to engage with you again. And so that's a really good post-event.
I love that. I love it. If you, again, you do that way before you went, you say like, okay, 1 week after, we're gonna have a webcast or a podcast or something for them, another event to invite them to. I love that. Speaking of promotional items, so again, that's sort of marketing side of things, but if your marketing people are providing promotional items for you to give at the booth or send afterwards, which I like a lot better than send afterwards, make sure they're providing promotional items that have lasting power. So what you want is, again, it's gotta be memorable, something useful, something people will keep. So you have lots and lots of impressions from that item. So just be thinking about what that would be like to have that. And I do love the idea of sending them afterwards because, yeah, one more touch. As many touches, positive touches as you can give them with good content, good insight, good visibility, all that stuff. All right, so that's what we do. Create, dominate, and generate so that we can get closed deals, because at the end, that's what we really want. We want a big dollar sign out over here because we got qualified leads of people who actually wanted to talk to us, and we closed some deals because of it. But you can't do that if they just scan badges and then have a list for you. You've got to do all these things, because if you invite people and you talk to people and you know what to talk to them about and you let them know why you're going and you do all these things, they're already engaged with you before they ever even step foot in the place. And they're your friends already and they're looking for you. If you've engaged with them on social media, that's another thing to do before the event. Engage with your prospects on social media. Interact with them. Click on their posts, click like, make a comment, share. And then during, you can also snap pictures and post them and tag people. And after, we like to take pictures and say, hey, it was great to meet you at the booth, and there's the picture of them with you in the booth or at the show if you're walking. People love to see pictures of themselves, especially if you're doing fun things. So you can, that's another great follow-up thing, is sending a photo. All right, so I think my time's up. Any questions?
Did you have a video?
Oh, well, I was good. Time?
Yes.
Okay, so this is just kind of fun because I'm a startup and most of you are startups. I thought you would appreciate this. So we're pre-revenue still, although, of course, if you know me, I've already sold stuff, but we are pre-revenue still. And we have been having a lot of fun doing Trade Show Makeover for some people and getting testimonials from them. So we got this, let me see if I can figure out how to make this video fit inside the screen.
Is there sound?
Scroll. Scroll? Yeah. And this one maybe? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's see if we can do it. So this is the first video we made from doing a show called AASP, which is the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals. And in exchange for all the work we did for them, they helped us put this video together, which is a great way when you're starting out to get some visibility. So this is the Trade Show Makeover. Bossy, that's me, Bossy.
From your buyer's perspective. So
that's my partner, Diana.
You've seen this stuff before, you've seen your collateral. Now I want you to get out of your booth. I want you to walk around, take 3 or 4 pictures of your booth. It will actually surprise you. Maybe ask your booth mate what it looks like to them. Look from your buyer's perspective. How are you going to be perceived?
We would not have had the success that we had without Trade Show Makeover. Truly, truly amazing. You guys came into our booth, transformed everything, taught us really not just how to set up our booth, but how to approach the show. Viewed it from all angles of passers-by, just things we never would have thought about. We came in with very specific goals, and we achieved all of them.
So yeah, always take us down.
I'm new to the sales industry and doing these kinds of events, so it was really helpful for me because I was given a lot of key ideas provided by the trade show team to really help me develop the right message to promote Infinity, you know, as the high value sales agency that we are. And they certainly made me feel way more confident going in you know, kind of figuring out what our whole approach should be, not just for me, but for our entire team going to the event.
Basically, what we want to do is have memorable content. I have to get copies of what people wanted. So probably remember that more than the name of my company, right, or what I do. So it's about memorable content.
conversations. But when we're at the booth and it's busy and there's a lot of people around us, we go into our, let me show you a demo.
The trade show makeover experience was solid, it was very good, it was amazing. Now, you guys were involved last year, no, and it was a dramatic, notable difference with your involvement at the show last year versus this year. Whatever experiencing last year, let's just say you took this and you did this. And that was great as well, was you actually came along and you gave us all coaching, optimizer, but we could increase our traffic, and we actually made it implement your changes. So yeah, I expect to close more deals.
So that was our little promo reel that we did for our Trade Show Makeover pre-revenue, but that's been really helpful because we work with companies like yours who need to go out and do a better job at trade shows and get return on investment, but we help the show organizers because they come to us and they say, well, people don't, they're not renewing their exhibiting for the next year. And I'm like, yeah, why? Because they didn't get any leads. Well, it's not the show organizer's fault always. It's sometimes that they didn't know what to do. So we walked through that show and people had literally, they give you a table and they had the table here and they were standing back here behind their table. I'm like, no, that is not the way you do this, right? And these are companies who exhibit all the time. Some of them have told me they've been doing this for 15, 20 years. And yet they put a table out with all their stuff on it instead behind you. Not inviting, right? So we're just trying to look at all sides of the trade show industry right now with this startup and really help them from the organizer to the person at the show to the sponsor to the participant have a better experience altogether because it's just about people meeting people and getting to know each other versus trying to sell or pitch or demo stuff. It's like, let me just know you because I can probably help you in some way. Even if you don't use my product or service, I know other people. I can introduce you. You can introduce me. So anyway, thanks for watching my video and thanks for being here to learn about trade shows.